also may be true, although there are some rumors out there that Chicago Cubs are very interested in Shane Green and Nick Castellanos, and there could be a deal in the works with it. Yeah, well, I think, you go to the Windy City, there's City that blows, and, the ball will fly out of the park, and it helps. You like that? The City that blows? Yes. You're welcome.
You know why it's called the Windy City? It has nothing to do with the wind.
No?
No. The original reason, and I just learned this because I went to Wrigley Field for the first time a week 10 days ago. And, one of the trivia questions is why is Chicago named the Windy City? It has nothing to do with the weather.
You're going to help us out here, Champ?
Well, I thought maybe you were going to say, oh, yeah, I know. It's because of the politicians.
Oh, a lot of hot air?
A lot of hot air. Because it is.
It's also windy, though.
It is windy, yes. It goes hand in hand.
They do have the wind.
They do.
I think it might have something to do with it as well.
Yes.
Did you wear your Tiger jersey out there at Wrigley?
I did not. No, I wore this today, which, they gave this one to me when I threw out the first pitch a few years ago. And so I don't like to wear it out because it's got my name on the back, and it kind of feels like
look at you.
Yeah, it kind of feels like kind of a D-bag thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you wear like a Michigan t-shirt out there instead?
Yeah, I did wear, because most of my wardrobe is a Michigan t-shirt. But I did get a Cubs hat. My first Cubs hat. My first time at Wrigley. It was awesome.
That's really too bad.
Have you been to
Wrigley's on the list, John.
Wrigley's on the list. Oh, Wrigley's on the list. Okay. Why?
I cannot stand Wrigley Field fans.
You just made the list.
You can't stand Wrigley Field fans. It has nothing to do with Wrigley Field.
You love the ballpark that allows you to have all the day games for forever. You know? No kidding. Okay, great. And your team sucks. They didn't care that the team sucks, and they don't even know who's on their team. And there's another team that plays in Chicago, by the way, that gets no love whatsoever.
It doesn't.
I mean, not even a sniff of love. By the way, they won the World Series. Also, nobody cared about the White Sox. Cub fans are awful. They're just awful. I can't stand them.
I'm not going to debate whether or not they are or aren't, but the field of itself, I loved going. It was a bucket list for me. Is to go, and see the facade outside, the Wrigley Field sign.
Yeah, I'm sure.
See the ivy.
It takes you back like the old days of Tiger Stadium, the old ballpark. Go to Fenway Park. The old ballparks, it's cool to see. Mm-hmm. They need to update it. They need to rip that thing down and build up a new structure.
Oh, God! Who are you?
I just hate the Cubs, man. I've always hated the Cubs. I grew up.
Tear down a piece of Americana just because you hate the Cubs.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
You just made the list.
Piss off those people in Chicago too, and that's fine. I have
no
issue
problem
with that.
It
doesn't bother me one bit. All right, you had mentioned that Jim Harbaugh is your champ of the week, and because of comments he made about his thoughts on transferring, and he said he needed to clarify it a little bit because when he brought up a mental health part of it, which was something that a player could say they're having some mental health issues, and that would allow for perhaps a transfer right away. It could be one of those things that allow you to do it. But once you say that, it's out there that this is this was your reason, and that could have a bad stigma on it. And he also didn't like it because he thought that people would be using that as an excuse just to get the immediate eligibility. So he needed to kind of elaborate on that and clarify that, and he was able to do so. He said, it's something that evolved into my mind. Where we're at right now is in a limbo period, in my opinion. The NCAA decides who's eligible immediately, who has to sit out a year in residence. It used to be that you could sit out a year, then be eligible. Now we see guys get eligible immediately. It's not really clear on what makes someone eligible immediately and what doesn't. I don't like the gray area of that. I think it cleans it up by saying everyone has 1 year where they could immediately be eligible. If you do it a second time, then it's getting a little hippity-hoppity. It's a litigious society we live in right now, as you know. The whole process has already gotten lawyers involved, lawyers who are specializing in this right now. And the other piece that bothers me about this is the youngsters that say, this is a mental health issue. I'm suffering from depression, or that's a reason to get eligible. And once that's known, that, hey, say this or say that to get eligible, the problem is I see that you're going to have guys that are, okay, yeah, I'm depressed, so they get used to say that, and then down the road, I don't see that helping them if it's not a legitimate thing. But nobody would know. But what are you going to say? 10 years down the road, I just had to say what I had to say? So Harbaugh is basically saying, look, he's concerned about people bring up the mental health issue because they think they would just take advantage of it. And then at the end, he says, and I can add, please don't write a bunch of letters. I care very deeply about mental health. I'm not saying everybody lying about that, just saying, okay, this is America. You started at this school, you didn't like it, and for whatever reason you're freely allowed to transfer to any other school like any other human being would have the right to do so. That's really the bottom line. I think it's really interesting. I'd love to hear what the people have to say. 248-539-9797 is a telephone number. Do you think that players should be allowed to transfer once and be eligible immediately without having to sit out the year? Now, you played big-time college football, obviously, at the University of Michigan. What's your take on this whole situation?
I think there is a system that we will eventually get to where, because we're talking about 18 to 22-year-old student athletes, where they are still learning to make decisions. They made a decision to go to a university. Now the decision to leave a university and go somewhere else is a life-changing decision. I think we should get to a point where, yes, if they follow through with the decision to transfer, they should be immediately eligible. There also should be, and I've talked to Ward Manuel about this. You could hear his interview on my podcast, In the Trenches, shameless plug. But
there it is.
When these kids put their name in the transfer portal right now, there should be a waiting period of 7 to 10 days, because I was in this position. There are a lot of guys or a lot of student athletes, guys and girls, that are in this position where you had a terrible week in classes. Maybe you didn't do so well on a test, and the coaches are yelling at you. Things aren't going this week the way they are. Instantly, you're like, it must be better somewhere else. And you put your name in the transfer portal, and all of a sudden it's public knowledge. And the university can take that scholarship back after that semester, even if you decide to come back to that school. There should be a time period in a week to 10 days where you put your name in that transfer portal, and you have to then go through a process of interviews with the coach, with the school counselors, academic and others, and at the end of that 10 days, if you still want to transfer, hey, you can go wherever you want. But don't make a decision just because emotionally on this one day or this week or this month that you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life. I think that would be a good mechanism in place that would allow kids to slow the process down, think about it, and then if they want to proceed with it after talking with their family, with all of these people, they could move forward with, I can go from Michigan to wherever I want and be immediately eligible.
Whether it's Michigan State, Ohio State, Notre Dame,
it could be anywhere in the Big Ten. Does not matter. And I think one of the things that is very transparent in what Jim Harbaugh wants is exactly that these kids should have the power to say, this is my life, this is my education, this is my athletic career, possibly. I should be able to transfer wherever I want and be immediately eligible, not have to sit out. The arguments for and against, or one of them against, is that when kids transfer, it becomes very hard for them to graduate on time. And I think that's one of the things that the NCAA is looking at, is how can we make this possible but still increase the numbers of graduation.
248-539-9797 is a telephone number. Do you agree with Jim Harbaugh that in his proposal is that student athletes should be granted at least a one-time transfer anywhere you want and be immediately eligible? You don't have to sit out. Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? We'll discuss it next year. 97.1 The Ticket.